Everybody loves a good underdog story. It's one of the most common and resonant stories ever told in human mythos, and this is one of the most amazing of such tales to exist in firearm lore. Of course, I'm talking about the Glock 17. Obviously, it was in the title and the thumbnail, can you not read? Born of humble Austrian origins, and from a company with no experience developing firearms, this lightweight polymer handgun from a curtain rod manufacturer has fast become a leader in the semi-automatic handgun market, and has developed its own brand of controversy along the way. From well-trained military and special forces to the hands of law enforcement officers across the US, and possibly even more in the hands of teenagers with auto switches on the back,
bang bang, skeet skeet.
The Glock has been estimated to have been produced over 20 million times. So how did this unknown manufacturer create the world's most produced handgun? How did it become so ubiquitous, and what the hell is up with those switches? Our story starts in 1963, when Gaston Glock founded Glock Limited Partnership business entity, producing consumer goods made of wood, metal, and polymers with his 3 employees. Hey, everyone's gotta start somewhere. Their first decade of operation isn't all that interesting to what I'm yapping about, so we'll skip the 60s and jump into the 70s, and here is where things begin to get fun. Gaston? No, not the Disney character, get that out of here, why is that on my PC? Sorry, Glock would dip his Austrian toes into the military market in the mid-1970s, developing a collection of knives, some grenade casings, and machine gun belt links. Fascinating stuff, but it set them on the path to greatness, with the Austrian military purchasing some of Glock's early military products, namely the FM78 field knife. Now having a foot in the door with the Austrian military, Glock would be privy to a request in 1980 from the Austrian Ministry of Defense for a new modern handgun design to replace their World War II era Walther P38, publishing a demanding list of 17 or so criteria for the new weapon. Among these were some pretty simple requests: chamber the handgun in 9mm and make it self-loading, but there were a few that would require some more technical work, such as a 15,000 round reliability test, and another that would come to play a much larger role in the Glock's legacy, that being the ability to prevent accidental discharge when faced with strikes, shocks, and drops onto a steel plate from 2 meters in the air. Glock wasn't the only one to catch wind of this request. In fact, some of the world's most iconic firearm manufacturers were well aware of Austria's search for a new handgun and had eagerly submitted their own established designs. H&K with variants of their P7 and P9 pistols, Beretta with their 92 SBF, Sig Sauer with their P220 and P226, and even FN Herstal would submit an updated variant of their Browning High Power. Nonetheless, in the face of such titans of the industry, the curtain rod man was prepared to throw his hat into the ring with a brand new, innovative handgun design. Glock didn't want to merely build upon existing designs and methods as the big-name manufacturers had. He wanted to create something truly unique, and into the 1980s, he would set about doing just that. With a new direction for the company, it seemed that a new name was in order, and this time our friend Gaston would get creative. Drawing upon images from conflicts past and thinking forward about firearm design, he would name the second incarnation of his company— no, it's just Glock again. Glock Company with Limited Liability. We can be thankful he may have not been all that creative with the name, because he certainly would be creative with the weapon he was trying to produce, and was more than willing to break accepted norms in what was modern handgun design in the 1980s. He would base his design off of his personal motto: on the way to perfection, every challenge has to be accepted. and would begin rapidly kidnapping as many firearms designers as he could track down to draw on their expertise to design his own handgun. In the basement of Glock's headquarters in Deutsch-Wagram, Austria, Gaston learned from these experts that his design must be easy to fire and easy to learn, along with being more reliable and durable than existing handgun designs. Combining these expert opinions with his own knowledge of metals, polymers, and industrial manufacturing, Glock began tackling the problem of modern handgun design, and somehow, with no experience designing firearms whatsoever, had his first design completed less than a year later. Glock and his team would work round the clock and employed alternate methods of construction for his firearm, such as using lightweight and more recoil-absorbent polymer components in place of heavier full metal ones, and a polymer receiver made through injection molding rather than the complex milling a metal one would require. But Glock's innovations wouldn't stop there, not by a long shot. His original pistol consisted of just 33 parts, much less than a typical handgun design, and featured a magazine with 17 rounds, more than your typical handgun magazine of this era as well, especially compared to the 8 to 10 round magazines of the HK and SIG offerings. Furthermore, Glock would abandon the common self-loading handgun traditions of a decocking mechanism or an external safety, opting instead for what he called the safe action system, with 3 independent and automatic safety mechanisms internally, drastically reducing the weapon's susceptibility to accidental discharges. At the end of 1981, Gaston Glock would anoint his new creation the Glock 17, with the meaning of the 17 still being a point of contention. Much of the internet claims it was as the pistol was the 17th invention patented by Glock, while the official Glock company history says it was because of the pistol's magazine capacity. But either way, the pistol was submitted to the Austrian Armed Forces for evaluation the following year. This is where the legend of the Glock really kicks off. At the 1982 Austrian trials, the Glock started off similar to the AR-15 in the 1960s, getting the same overzealous reaction from the established old guard of firearm manufacturers that the flimsy plastic toy gun from this random Austrian guy would never be able to match their time-tested iconic designs. But they couldn't have been more wrong. By November of 1982, the Glock 17 had swept the competition by a landslide, outperforming every other submitted design by such a wide margin that, after Austria had formally adopted the Glock as the P80, many other nations were knocking on Gaston's door looking to buy some handguns. Glock received an order for 25,000 from the Austrians in 1982, and a decade later, 350,000 of his handgun had been sold to over 45 nations, and to one gun-loving nation in particular. You know them, you certainly have an opinion on them, America. The Glock entered the public consciousness on the other side of the Atlantic in 1984, with Soldier of Fortune magazine's October issue that year, and despite Glock not yet operating stateside, demand was already growing for his pistol. Luckily, it wouldn't take long for the Austrians to bring their business to the United States, and in 1986, after aggressively advertising to police departments nationwide, the Glock 17 arrived on American soil and became an instant hit, with dozens of law enforcement units adopting the handgun, along with strong civilian interest in the new platform. Their strong start in the American market was also helped greatly by Glock offering deep discounts on the weapon for law enforcement for wider adoption, and thus more legitimacy in the average civilian's eyes. With wide adoption in the States, American media soon began to pick up on the newfangled Austrian Wonder Pistol, and began featuring it in movies and shows such as Law & Order, and most famously, Die Hard 2, with Bruce Willis's iconic character giving an odd soliloquy about the handgun that gets nearly everything wrong about it, but contributed greatly to the legend of the Glock. And the same year the weapon arrived in the US, the most notorious of all Glocks would emerge, the Glock 18. Now before I get to the Glock 18 itself, I need to explain something about Glock handguns and all their variants. First off, there are a fuck ton, like Kalashnikov levels of variants, like there are 20 million of these handguns that have been made. So if you want a full breakdown of every known Glock variant, I'll link a source below, because I don't have time and you don't have the attention span. Second, Glocks are sort of like Pokemon. Now I know that sounds weird, but it'll make sense, I promise. Glock handguns are divided into not only variants, but also generations, which, currently, Glock is on their 5th generation of pistols, each taking the basic designs and methodology of the original and improving on the ideas introduced by its predecessor, kinda like Pokemon. The first generation of Glocks are just the standard Glock 17s Gaston first released in 1982, along with encompassing the original Glock 18 made for Austrian Special Forces. In 1988, the Gen 2 Glock was released, featuring more checkering on the grips and some improvements to the safety mechanism, along with drastically expanding the Glock's caliber range to include the likes of 45 ACP, 40 Smith & Wesson, and 10mm auto. The Gen 3 would follow in 1998, adding an accessory rail so everyone who so adamantly needs their very necessary tactical additions could finally use them on their Glocks, along with more, and somehow controversial, adjustments to the grip, with finger and thumb grooves added to it. Gen 4 would take until 2010 to be released, and to the dismay of those fundamentally opposed to grooves on their grips, the grip would remain the same, though a larger magazine release was added to it. Along with this would come a new spring mechanism that would noticeably reduce the weapon's recoil, and this generation also saw the first introduction of Glocks capable of being equipped with red dot sights without requiring additional gunsmithing. And finally, the 5th generation would be released in 2017, adding ambidextrous slide stops, forward serrations on the slide, a flared magwell, and, to the joy of those with a love of smooth grips, the finger and thumb grooves were removed. Now that's out of the way, let's get to the controversy. The Glock 18 holds a special place in the hearts and minds of firearm enthusiasts. It is the ultimate fully automatic handgun design, or supposedly. Built for the Austrian Special Forces in the mid-80s, the weapon has gained notoriety for simply being a forbidden automatic version of one of the world's most recognizable pistols. Though it has been illegal pretty much everywhere for civilian use since it was introduced, a nifty little invention in the late 90s would bring a whole new level of controversy to the Glock. The Glock is no stranger to controversy. For much of its early life, it was demonized as a weapon for terrorists, with many citing its polymer frame as making it undetectable by airport screenings, which just wasn't true. There were still more than enough metal components in the weapon to make it easily detectable, and the aforementioned Die Hard 2 scene did little to quell such myths. Similar to the AR-15 and SPAS-12, the Glock would also be banned under the 1994 federal assault weapon ban, due to its 17-round magazine, resulting in Glock producing the 10-round Glock 26 and 27 handguns. The more modern controversy around the weapon stems instead from Jorge Leon's 1996 patent for what are now known as Glock switches. Now, I am nowhere near qualified enough to tell you how these things work, but I can tell you 3 things for sure. Number 1, these switches are designed to turn a regular semi-automatic Glock handgun into a select fire variant similar to the Glock 18. Number 2, Glock has never made or endorsed any of these products. And number 3, for the vast majority of the population, adding one of these to a Glock will also add a felony charge to your record if you're caught with one, as has happened in a number of high-profile cases in recent years involving rappers. As evidenced by the hours upon hours of footage of idiots with switch-equipped Glocks, the automatic fire is completely uncontrollable, and will wear the weapon's internals down much faster. If the damn switch even works in the first place, which many don't due to their production by sketchy aftermarket manufacturers in China. And all of this could be yours for the low price of $50, and then a visit from everyone's favorite pet assassins. These switches have also become a massive part of internet culture, with people for some reason plastering pictures and videos of themselves with Switch-equipped Glocks all over social media, along with inadvertently advertising their upcoming felony firearm case. The most concerning thing about these videos, to me at least, is how unbelievably idiotic a lot of these people are with these literal weapons, and I'm sure LiveLeak has a comprehensive back catalogue of all the times those videos didn't go as planned. Nonetheless, the Glock switch has kept the legend of the Glock alive into the modern age, even though Glock themselves haven't sold all that many of their own automatics due to the heavy restrictions placed upon them across the globe and its impractical nature, and the continued debates over gun control keep the weapon at the forefront of public consciousness. The Glock has been with us for over 40 years now, and its popularity shows no signs of stopping anytime soon, with Glock passing the 20 million produced mark in 2020, and with its continued widespread success has come its persistent involvement in various controversies concerning gun rights and gun safety, with a number of American lawsuits being filed against Glock explicitly for making a firearm that can be converted to an automatic, even though they don't make or endorse any of the products that make this conversion. Today, the militaries, security forces, and law enforcement units of nearly 50 nations still use the Glock as their primary handgun, putting it on par with the handguns of the old guard that once thought little of Gaston Glock's, admittedly ugly, plastic design, along with countless more in the hands of civilians, and God knows how many are in the hands of less reputable organizations. As for Gaston, well, he would continue to head Glock until his death in December 2023, remaining out of the spotlight and largely keeping to himself, though his name would crop up quite famously in 1999, when he, at the age of 73, successfully fought off a would-be assassin with his bare hands, who had been hired by one of his most trusted colleagues. Glock's American division has continued its aggressive advertising campaigns as it has since it arrived in the 80s, more recently creating the comedic Glock and Gunny promotional videos, demonstrating some practical yet hilarious real-world uses for their handgun, which I've used clips from throughout this video, and featuring the drill sergeant of drill sergeants himself, the late Ronald Lee Ermey. The weapon's reputation really depends where you find yourself on the political spectrum, with some hailing it as the gold standard for modern handgun design and for putting power back into the hands of law enforcement, while others see it as a proto-machine gun that gives criminals an easily concealable weapon that has been used in some of the most infamous mass shootings over the last 30 years. Regardless, the Glock undeniably overcame the odds in the 1980s and has since become one of the world's most recognizable firearms, even to those without a keen firearm or military interest, continuing to live on as the Austrian wonder pistol that looks like it was drawn by a child. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned something new. If you did, please like the video and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next one.